You're listening to the Healing from Cptsd podcast. My name is Justin Vanderwind, and I am your host. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about whether or not you are ready to heal from Cptsd. If you haven't done so already, be sure to visit our website at healingfromcptsd.com and sign up on our email list for regular updates, a free weekly newsletter, as well as to be first in line for the launch of the Healing from Cptsd course. All links will be in the description below. Alright everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Healing from Cptsd. My name is Justin Vanderwind, and I am your host. So, as you can see from the title of this episode, are you ready to heal from Cptsd? The reason I asked that question is because I am officially finished with the course. The course is done. It's ready to go. I'm just tying up some loose ends as far as, on the back end with technical stuff and marketing and all that type of stuff. But it is done, and I'm really happy with it. I'm really excited about sharing it with anybody who's interested. And so today, I thought I'd just talk a little bit about the overall idea of healing from Cptsd, because that's the name of the podcast, and that's why you're here. I'm sure. You're here to A, figure out what's going on with the narcissist in your life, and then B, how do we heal from this Cptsd? It's like, what do we do here? So today I kind of wanted to talk about actually healing from Cptsd and the fact that it is possible, that you can do it. I know, there's tons of, this is a podcast / YouTube channel that talks about narcissistic abuse and Cptsd. But the truth is you can talk about all that stuff. There are people that have, right? Should I stay with, what should I do with my toxic boyfriend? Should I leave him? Should I stay? So I don't know. I've met so many interesting people in a lot of these Cptsd groups, because it's like they get mad if they say, it's like first they ask what they should do, and then it's like, well, you gotta, I mean, if you're asking what you should do, you gotta just get out of there. I mean, and I don't know, I've gotten in a lot of trouble for that. I don't know why. It doesn't really make any sense to me. It's like, hey, I'm not the abuser here. I'm trying to get you out of the fire, right? And you asked, right? See, my boundaries are better than they once were. Like, you asked this question. That's why I'm answering it. I didn't just like blast in and start trying to give advice, so. But anyway, healing from Cptsd, taking your life back, is definitely possible. And I thought I'd share a little bit about my own, not just my own journey, but my own healing journey. And because it was, God. I've mentioned this before, but, before I learned about Cptsd, I knew something was wrong on the inside of me, but I didn't know what it was. So I just went kind of like balls to the walls crazy as far as, pulling out all the stops to find out what was wrong, therapists, doctors, I've mentioned all this before, personal development workshops, so I did so much work, but so by the time, I don't know, it was weird. It was like, I guess in this day and age, people are finding out they have Cptsd before they start doing any work. So I don't know, it was a weird time. I guess it was the 90s or whatever. So it was like, so. But anyway, so by the time I found out about Cptsd, part of me was like, man, I wish I would have known this years ago. But the other, on the other side of that coin, as I've said, because I did so much work and I was really interested in things like personal development and personal growth and healing and spirituality and all that type of stuff. And I had learned so many different types of things for healing and personal growth. By the time I learned about Cptsd, I was like, okay, it was nice to have a roadmap here, and now I have these tools that I can use to overcome the Cptsd. And so that's what I did. I took things from many, I don't know, I'm a big picture type of person, so I how do I put this? It's kind of like if life is like a buffet, and I don't trust anyone because of the narcissistic abuse, right? I'm sure you're probably familiar with not trusting it's not just not trusting anyone emotionally. I don't trust anything. You know what I mean? Like my go-to is to test as much out as I possibly can, right? So like if life is a buffet, I'm trying to I want to taste, like if someone says, "Oh, this is good" or "this is bad," I want to taste it for myself. You know what I mean? So I kind of like took time to sort of taste as much as I possibly could in the buffet of life, as far as what was helpful for healing and growth, what was going on. And as a result of doing that, I had these tools I was able to kind of put together, and I saw the big picture of CPTSD and what was going on with CPTSD, what needed to be done to overcome it. And I had some really unique tools. And you know what's funny? I'll share this with you. No one person or group, whether it was a therapist or a healer of some kind, nobody, and I mean nobody, saw all the different things that I saw. And it's not that I'm, unique or special or anything, but it's the fact that I didn't trust anyone, and I decided to go beyond what their recommendations were and seek out other recommendations. That's why I honestly am a big fan of that. Like if someone says, "Well, just believe me," well, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna go try out different things for myself and see what actually works, what doesn't work. And the other thing is, not everything works for everyone. So, had I listened to all those people, I wouldn't have been able to find all these different tools and to be able to have sort of this bird's eye picture of like the whole, or not the whole picture, but most of it. And so, yeah, I put together this little system for myself here. And, I'm one of those people that was really always interested. If you're familiar with Tony Robbins, or you've read any of his stuff or been to any of his courses or whatever, at some point he mentions just having this weird thirst for he just wanted to know, as a kid, as a teenager, the best solutions for life, for everything, every area of life, right? Like physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, the whole 9 yards. And I related to that when I heard his story, because I had a similar thirst, and I was doing similar things. So, I was really interested in healing on every level, right? So, I already kind of had a system, and that's the thing. That's the unique position I was in, is that I already was working on myself and growing and healing. I was just doing basic general emotional healing work, right? But once I found out about CPTSD, I was able to go a little deeper and tweak things to address certain things. And obviously, really, it can manifest a little bit differently for everyone. But for me, I would say the way CPTSD really affected my life was toxic shame, social anxiety, the emotional flashbacks. Where I had emotional flashbacks that were sort of debilitating, and I didn't know what they were, how to stop them, or what would cause them or not cause them. So that's where the isolation habit came into play. And honestly, as I've said, it's when you've been through something like narcissistic abuse, the one thing I learned that I'll just share with you here is that nobody knows what, it's we're almost in a territory, a new frontier that a lot of people, they just haven't, there's many different areas in life where there's a lot of people that have been there and done that and have a ton of experience and can give you some pointers. But the truth is, with narcissistic abuse and CPTSD, even the people that know what it is now, mental health professionals and stuff, it's still a new terrain, right? And no one's really going to tell you that. We're still trying to figure all this stuff out. You'll hear me mention Pete Walker a lot, because he seemed to nail it with that book, man. That CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving. As far as looking at the big picture of what CPTSD is, he nailed it. But even for him, he said, this book is just a kind of a roadmap. You're gonna have to continue the journey from here. So that's kind of what I did for myself, and that's kind of what this course is about. And it just sharing my experiences with it, my understanding of the terrain of both narcissistic abuse, CPTSD, and then overcoming it and what needs to be done to overcome it, and really honing in on sort of the key factors and the key issues. Because a lot of these, how do I put this? I'm the type of person that I have the kind of mind where it's if something works, I want to know why. I want to know what it is that's making something work. I want to know what the problem actually is. I want to know the solution, but I also want to understand how the solution is working and why. And a lot of times, I got to tell you, even high up people, people in workshops and stuff, even if something was showing to be effective in treating something or overcoming something for certain people, there really was very rarely an explanation from these people as to why it was working. So I was fascinated. I was like, okay, this is interesting. What's going on here? Because a lot of these workshops, and when I say workshops, you might be familiar with what I'm talking about. Some of them that are out there, like LifeSpring, that's an old one. I think EST was one of the originals. There's gratitude training, which is kind of honestly based where I'm from, down in South Florida. Tony Robbins, it's himself, like his teachings and stuff, it's similar stuff. There's other groups, but it's basically like what they call large group awareness training groups, right? Where it's kind of like you go into a big room and there's a bunch of people in there and you kind of like get real vulnerable, like real open and honest with your feelings, with what's holding you back. And then the overall idea, it's not, those places aren't really for emotional healing so much as like kind of finding out like what's blocking you in your personal life, like, and then learning how to remove those blocks and then kind of creating your life the way you'd like it to go. And as a result of going through a lot of that, a lot of emotional healing work can happen. And what's happening in those groups is, you're in a situation, you're in an environment where you're having to be really open and really authentic and really, really vulnerable to a whole bunch of people really quick, all in one shot, like over a weekend or a few days or something. And I should not have been in there, to be honest with you, but I didn't know the Cptsd, but I saw what was working. Like so I was able to take my experiences from there and kind of like modify it for myself, honestly, and for people that have Cptsd, frankly. But one of the great things is learning how to overcome your shame, right? And just knowing what shame is and how to move through it. And that's a big part of what we cover in the Healing from Cptsd course. The emotional flashbacks, once you become sort of conscious of when you're having an emotional flashback and what they are, and then you can just remember it. It's kind of weird in the mind, right? It's kind of a mind game. You have to kind of, it's kind of a discipline because it's almost like lucid dreaming, where you're having to become like aware that you're dreaming in the dream. That's kind of, in my experience, that's what it's like when you're trying to watch your thoughts in general, because it's really easy to forget, right? People are like, oh, be conscious of your thoughts or watch your thoughts. That's easier said than done. You know what I mean? Like, especially as you're moving through the day, you're just going through the motions, right? Generally speaking. But you can catch yourself. It takes a little practice. But whether we're dealing with emotional flashbacks or the vicious inner critic, you can definitely catch your thoughts, you can catch your feelings, and it takes a little practice, I'm not going to lie to you, but once you get it and you start to learn how to reverse the uncomfortable feelings, the sort of incessant worrying and an obsession of whatever you're obsessing about, I'm sure you have some form of, like that kind of mind that races and obsesses about stuff because you're constantly worried that something's going to go wrong, or you're going to be wrong in some way, or you're going to miss something, and there might be like some kind of narcissistic. I really think anyone who's gone through narcissistic abuse has some form of that in their mind, where it's like they're hyper vigilant, and that's really what it is. It's like they're just constantly worried and stressed and on eggshells that something's going to go wrong. They're trying to plan for it. They're trying to they're trying to figure out any possible thing that could go wrong and to prevent it from happening. That's how I was anyway with my narcissist. Like, I was trying to solve all the problems. Little did I know that that wasn't the goal for the narcissist, right? So, but my point is, I still had that mindset. So that hypervigilance, actually, which is interesting, is that it can come in handy when you're trying to heal from Cptsd. Because if you can become hypervigilant, if you can kind of like move your hypervigilance away from things that are bothering you and things you're worried about to your own healing and growth, it can really be very helpful, because you can, it might become easier for you to catch your thoughts. That's how it was for me, because I was like, oh, I need to watch my thoughts and watch out for the emotional flashbacks. So I became hyper vigilant for that. So I guess this is kind of what, like certain people, Pete Walker has said this before, but it's like once you start healing from Cptsd, you realize you have some, like, I don't know, I don't want to call them superhuman abilities, but just like you've got some abilities that you've developed because of what you've had to go through, and you can now use those abilities to heal and grow, right? So I guess if there's a silver lining to all this, that's one silver lining, right? But, once you become used to noticing emotional flashbacks and learning how to soothe yourself and calm yourself and how to get your needs met, it'll become much easier to do on a regular basis. It almost will like rewire your brain in and of itself, because your brain itself will know. It's like, oh, okay, like this is what's going on. This is how to, move from a place of pain to a place of pleasure, because that's kind of how the brain works on a basic level, right? It wants to whether we're talking about humans or animals, we want to kind of like avoid pain and attract pleasure, right? So once you experience like how to soothe yourself and how to have good feelings and how to feel good and how to comfort yourself, soothing emotional flashbacks will become much easier. The vicious inner critic, but overcoming CPTSD will become a lot easier too. At the core of overcoming CPTSD is honestly really learning how to love yourself, how to love but soothe yourself, to be there for yourself the way a loving parent would be there for their child. Sort of like that. Like if you're a parent, you know that I'm not a parent, but I see parents, right? Like, and I know how mothers are and hopefully fathers. Usually it seems like mothers are a little more interested in their kids than fathers these days. It's just kind of sad, but it's not all dads, but you know what I mean, right? Like they've got that, like they're honed in to their kids and their kids' needs and like keeping them safe and making sure their well-being is being taken care of and stuff like that. You've just got to wire your brain to do that for you. Because if you've been through narcissistic abuse, you haven't had that. And that's part of what self-abandonment is all about. So it's really just, and they call it complex PTSD, but I got to tell you too, my one of my big interests overall in this whole thing with creating a system for myself and trying to create something that might be able to help others is to keep it as simple as possible, right? I'm trying to do all this and make it as simple to understand as far as what's going on, and then as simple as possible to heal from and overcome the CPTSD. So that's what I've done in this course. I'm really one of those people that it's like the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. That's kind of how I operate. So, those courses that have like thousands of hours, it's like, oh, this course has 80 hours of content. It's like, my God, like, first of all, who wants to sit through 80 hours? Isn't that just kind of daunting? Like, just thinking about it, just seeing that number, like, wait a minute, I got to go 80 hours. My God. So there, most stuff doesn't. There are some things that require more in-depth, right, like long-term education. But as far as the theories, as far as the tools needed to heal from CPTSD, what I put together, it's overall pretty simple, and really it's like a combination of the awareness, the tools to heal from CPTSD. But the biggest component is you putting these tools into action, because it's just kind of like anything else, right? Like, you can become healthy, but it's like you have to do it, right? Like someone can give you all the tools, all the teachings or whatever on any subject, but if you don't practice it, you're not going to grow. And the same thing applies here. So that's, and the truth is, like, whether you're seeing a therapist or not, really you've got to, especially if you have something like CPTSD, you have to be committed to your own healing on a regular. For me, it's a daily thing. It was a daily thing, but at least a regular basis, right? So, because that's how you're going to grow. And I just wanted to get out of it. Like, I didn't want to be kind of held back or tied down from extreme social anxiety or emotional flashbacks or self-sabotaging behaviors or trouble with social situations. So, oh my God, I was like just obsessed with overcoming it and healing through it. And I did a considerable amount of work with both my emotional healing as well as sort of reconditioning my thought patterns for myself as well as the world. And what the cool thing is like a lot of us have this program sort of running in our mind, or this idea, honestly, whether you have CPTSD or not, that we like to project out onto the world of like what people are thinking or judgments, and that's why we have anxiety. If you have anxiety, I mean, that's a large part of it anyways. Like, social anxiety is like, oh, what are they thinking, or they're judging me, or what if I say the wrong thing or something like that. And I've struggled with that too. But the truth is, once I learned how to soothe myself and sort of be my own friend, you know what I mean? It really helped to alleviate social anxiety. And so, you'll see that the methods I put together in this course here will sort of, I wanted to design something that could kind of largely address everything as much as possible in each step of the way, right? So that's what I did. And again, like learning to soothe yourself, learning to calm yourself, learning to practice self-compassion and self-love is a big part of overcoming CPTSD, because that's what you're going to have to use out in the world in day-to-day life, right? Like I have, unique methods for healing and more in-depth emotional processing and stuff like that. That's included in the course. But just sort of as a rough cheat sheet, that's what it's going to be like for you to heal and overcome, is to learn to love yourself, soothe yourself, and then to recondition yourself. As hard as it is, it's almost like you have to become your own parent and re-raise yourself, basically. I don't know, if you're someone who has CPTSD from just like a husband or wife or something, but you had decent parents, honestly, I don't know how that works. I know how overcoming CPTSD works, but it might be easier for someone like that to overcome CPTSD because they've actually been with healthy people before, right? So I don't know, but if you have CPTSD, no matter how you got it, by the way, this course is going to be helpful for you. So yeah, honestly, like I got so used to doing so much personal work and healing work with CPTSD that one day I just kind of like looked over the different areas of developmental arrest with CPTSD, right? The toxic shame, the self-abandonment, the emotional flashbacks, social anxiety, and my vicious inner critic. And I just kind of took an honest inventory of myself and like where I was, like where I used to be and where I was now. And I realized I did it. Like I successfully, like, there's still work to be done. For me, it's just like exercise or eating healthy. Like it's just one of those things it's not like you can do it a few times and you're like completely done. It's more of a regular practice, like, and honestly, like emotional health and well-being should be a regular practice for people anyway, even though, I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there neglecting their emotional selves, whether they have CPTSD or not, but if you do emotional work, like I know for some people it's like, man, I don't want to do this. But if you do some, like you'll feel so much better just in and of yourself. I feel a lot better than I used to. My ability to recognize what's going on inside myself and change my feelings, to regulate my feelings, to soothe my feelings. And that's the big thing, is once I learned how to soothe, practicing self-love and self-compassion is a huge aspect of largely overcoming most of what CPTSD is, and learning how to just be on my own side, and honestly learning better communication skills. That was a big one for me. Assertiveness and effective communication skills. What's interesting is that, like, with assertiveness, for me it was tough to be assertive, but it wasn't just anxiety that was causing the problem. It was, if I was open and sort of vulnerable, just that alone would trigger a form of emotional flashback inside me. Now, you might be able to relate to that. I don't know if you have something like that going on, where it's like, if you are open or vulnerable or in a situation where people are seeing you for who you really are, it might cause you to not only have anxiety, but to kind of like have like a panic attack. So it was almost impossible for me to be assertive. So I realized what I needed to do was learn assertiveness and effective communication skills, and to practice them even on my own, because that would allow me to practice being assertive, but then also, and so when I would have if I had a mini emotional flashback, even just by myself, right? I'm talking about practicing these skills just by yourself, because that's what I did. That's how I started. Just out into the air, or, in front of a mirror or something. And I know for some people that might seem overwhelming, and that's okay too. But for me, it was important to learn, because being open allowed me to, it was kind of nerve-wracking, so it allowed me to soothe social anxiety. But if I had a little emotional flashback while I was being assertive, it allowed me to move through it. But and soothe myself. But as I learned better communication skills and healthy assertiveness, so it's healthy communication, it's open communication, but there's also some strength behind it, right? Where you feel empowered to speak and be open. It helped. It's what Walker calls, therapeutic flashbacks, where you kind of gradually go through little things that make you uncomfortable, and as you do, you'll gradually start to be more comfortable in those situations, and it'll just kind of dissolve, right? Your panic around that particular issue. So that's what I did, and that has helped me so much, because when you're being open and vulnerable, you're dealing with your toxic shame, right? It's allowing you to alleviate that inner shame. Even honestly, like, I don't know if this would work for everyone, but I can tell you, for me, having toxic levels of shame, just again doing it by myself, was therapeutic. Like, I could feel shame alleviating from me, or moving away from me just by practicing assertiveness and effective communication. Even just like because you know what's funny? One time I went to this therapist and she was like, "Why don't you pretend?" It's like we were talking about my dad or something, and she was like, "Why don't you look at that empty chair and just pretend like your dad is there and just tell him what you really want to say?" And my first thing was like, "Wait a minute, are you telling me I can get therapy from talking to an empty chair? Because I could do that at home." I don't think that's what the doctor wanted me to think, but I realized, I was like, wait a minute, like, because I saw it, right? I was like, oh, okay, like, I don't need the therapist. The therapy, like, that's another goal of mine with this course is like, I want to kind of empower people to be able to take their own healing and lives back into their own hands for the most part, right? When it comes to like chemical imbalances or like, really more in serious, mental health issues, yeah, there's times for medication and more like psychiatric type care and stuff like that. But when we're talking about emotional healing and emotional well-being and, healing trauma, honestly, you can do the vast majority of that all by yourself, for sure, 100%. Because I've done it. I found out how to do it, and I know it's possible. And so, because you shouldn't have to, like I was just someone who never wanted to be dependent on anyone or anything as far as my healing is concerned, right? So, like, for example, even with 12-step groups, it's like, all right, let's say I'm an alcoholic, right? I'm not against 12-step groups, but for me, I was like, man, I don't want to be like dependent on having to go to some group on a regular basis just so I don't have a relapse with alcoholism. I'm not an alcoholic, by the way. I'm just using that as an example. But because I've had like going to Al-Anon or Coda or something, it's like I don't want to come to these things for the rest of my life. So, because the truth is there is going to be times where you're like all by yourself, right? Like you're on your own. Maybe you don't have a group you can get to. Maybe you don't have an accountability partner to call, and you're kind of on your own. So there's going to come times where it's like you got to learn how to overcome your habit or addiction or alone, or heal on your own, or you know what I mean? So I was always really interested in that. I want to do as much on my own as possible to be as self-sufficient as possible. And so that's where I was coming from with creating a lot of this stuff, and it worked. I just think, I don't know, it's time for people to heal and take their lives back so they're not having to be dependent on anyone. You know what I mean? As much as they possibly can. So anyway, the practicing assertiveness and effective communication for me was an incredible way. Because, by the way, I did some of those I did some of those exercises in some of these workshops and stuff. They didn't call it that, but that's basically what was going on. And I realized, I was like, wait a minute, like, because my communication skills were terrible. There is a period of time. Again, it's kind of like being raised by wild animals, right? So it's like you almost like don't even know how to speak English. It's like, so I'm not saying I didn't know how to speak like the English language or anything, but as far as like communicating, like sort of on an emotional level, you know what I'm saying? Like saying things that weren't necessarily nice to say, not nice, not mean, but I was just kind of one of those people that was like like I might say something that was a little insensitive and not even realize that it was insensitive. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. So when when I say effective communication, it's like I'm learning how to speak in a healthy way, but I'm also learning how to speak to another person in a more healthy, rational way, in a more caring, compassionate way. You know what I mean? So, because my emotional intelligence wasn't very high, so I had to like learn some of that too. So practicing the assertiveness and effective communication just on my own, or again, like if you're doing this doctor's technique of just speaking to an empty chair and pretending like someone specific is there, or in the mirror, or whatever, it's extremely powerful, right? I kind of liken it to, like if you're practicing some form of martial arts or something, yeah, like, you're gonna ultimately want to test your skills in some sparring or, against a real person or something like that. But the truth is, a lot of those people, it could be martial arts, could be anything. If you can practice on your own and get an incredible amount of development and growth, and I would argue that your practice is what's going to make the difference when you are in a real life situation, or you're having to spar with someone, or you're performing a musical piece or something like that. I would argue it's probably like 90% you practicing on your own, right? that makes someone successful or good at something. And this is the same thing, right? So just talking to the air, learning assertiveness and effective communication techniques in different situations in life, I was like, this is incredible. In fact, I'm amazed this doesn't exist, like, more. It's not more widely known or done. It doesn't make any sense, right? Like, so that's part of this course, the assertiveness and effective communication skills. It's an integral part of the course itself. I'll share this with you too, just so you know. But so I created this course, but then after the course, I kind of designed sort of a like a healing from CPTSD ongoing membership program where you can kind of like, it's kind of like if you go to it's like, oh, well, I need to work out, but I don't want to go work out. But if you go like to a class or something where there's like an instructor or something and you can do it like once a week, you can at least get something in for the week and not have to feel like you have to do it all on your own, right? So that's kind of the idea here. So I created sort of a support group / mastermind group for people that have gone through the course and who are actually specifically committed to their own healing and growth. You don't necessarily have to have gone through the course first, but I definitely recommend it. But you definitely should be someone who's committed to your healing and growth, and working on your communication skills and stuff like that. So there'll be a group where you can like practice assertiveness and effective communication skills with others in a safe place if you'd like to do that. You can sort of like be in a place where you can speak open and vulnerably with others if you'd like to do that, which helps with your toxic shame. And just to kind of get some practice and to continue to heal, right? Because, it doesn't matter how long a course is, right? Like it could be 80 hours. With something like CPTSD, it's going to take some time, right? Like it's going to take a lengthy amount of time to, continue to practice. It's more of a long-term thing. So I have that set up so we can do that, which I'm really excited about. This is like the perfect time in human history to have something like this because there's all kinds of great stuff for like webinars or one-on-one sessions, and you don't have to do it with me. The cool thing about the group is you can do it with anyone else in there if you want, right? You can get like an account. You can do whatever you want. If you just want to speak your mind, you can do that. If you want to have someone that you can just kind of speak openly and vulnerably to, you can do that. If you want to do a small group, we can do that. So I'm really excited because there's a lot that we can do to kind of like help each other in our healing and growth. But also, I don't know if you guys know what a mastermind group is, but those are generally groups. I think I mentioned this, didn't I? At some point. But anyway, it's kind of like a group where the people in the group hold each other accountable for their personal goals and stuff like that. So setting and achieving specific goals in different areas is also a part of this course. And, holding yourself accountable to achieving those goals or having any questions or concerns, getting feedback and having support and doing all these things is part of what this membership group is as well. So that will be something that, and there's more sort of things involved with the membership program itself, but I just wanted to share that when it comes to assertiveness and effective communication and being able to practice those skills, and honestly, now we can do it from home with others because you don't have to go to some particular group. And honestly, for people like us, there's not many groups out there for this type of specific stuff, right? So for me, I don't want, and by the way, I have been to some and people just want to like, I don't mean this to sound mean or anything. I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like, I just noticed that so many people, so many of these groups or meetups or whatever, right? We get together and it's like, all right, like we've been through narcissistic abuse, we have CPTSD, but then people just want to talk about their stories or whatever. But I was like, all right, after a while, it's like I want to solve these issues personally. Like I'm not saying you guys have to do that, but I wanted more. So I created something where you could A, heal and work on your solutions, and B, if you want to sort of be able to share things that, are bothering you, you can do that too, right? Because there's nothing wrong with like sharing or being open. That's good, but we gotta like at some point we gotta like try to heal and grow too, So that's a little bit about this course. I would consider myself largely healed from the effects of CPTSD for sure. Because I noticed, I looked down, I wrote those things down, right? Like I looked over my toxic shame, emotional flashbacks, and I realized, I was like, wow, like, because I've been in situations where I used to be more like anxious or had troubles communicating, and I could see the progress, right? I could see it and I could feel it in real world situations as well as within myself, right? So I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, oh my God, like I thought, I felt like I was in a prison I was never going to get out of. So I wanted to share that with you because there's hope for healing from CPTSD if that's what you're looking to do. And really, this whole podcast, the whole channel, it's all designed, it's all geared towards healing from CPTSD. So the course is, as I said, it's done. And I'm going to have a launch week, right? Like a week-long launch where the course will be available for a special low price. And stuff like that, and then after the launch, then the price is going to go up a little bit. So just to give you an idea of what's going to be happening here, that launch, again, I'm just tying up some loose ends as far as like over on the website and marketing and all that type of stuff goes. But the launch itself should be starting within the next week or so, for sure. And then at that point, the course will be available. I'll also have like coaching sessions if someone feels like they want to do that. I am not a therapist, but we can definitely do coaching if you're looking to, like understand something in the course a little bit deeper, or really put together some kind of I have it designed in the course already for you to have, as far as setting something up for your continued healing and growth. But if you want to like come up with some more strategies or dealing with goals or just I will have that available if you're interested in doing that. And yeah, so I'm really excited. I'm happy that I'm done with this. I feel pretty good about it. And if you're interested in healing from CPTSD, you can do it. A and B. This what will be available in this course is certainly a way to do that in a powerful way. So there you go. I want to say the launch period we should be in the midst of the launch period by the time we're doing a podcast next week. If not, it's going to be within the next week or week and a half or so. So, anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. If you're looking to heal from CPTSD, there's some hope here. There's some light at the end of the tunnel. You don't just have to hear people telling stories over and over and over. So we're going to have that available, healing from CPTSD. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will see you in the next podcast. And if you're, I'll see you in the launch, because the next podcast will be part of the launch. So anyway, you guys take care, and I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.